Now it's mid-autumn, and that means it's time to plant your brassicas if you haven't done so already. Today I'm going to put in some dwarf broccoli into this raised garden bed. Now whether you've got an existing bed or whether it's a new one or whether it's one that you've moved like I have with this, I've just moved this and I've reset it up. The same rules apply. You need to prepare this bed because brassicas are very heavy feeders. So I do this twice a year, just before I do the spring planting and just before I do the autumn planting. Now this is a good quality sandy loam. And with loam, you want that sandiness because the sand in the loam is going to give you good drainage, but you've also got some organic material in there. And I've been using this for the last couple of years, but at the end of each growing season or before I plant, I always do a refresh. Now, what I'd suggest doing is that first of all, we're just going to have a bit of a turnover of all this material. And what you're looking for is things like, I've got bits of clay, that's a bit of dirt, bits of clay and stones that work their way to the surface. You're also looking for any root balls left over from the previous planting, and just probably remove those unless they're peas. If they're peas, you leave them in there because peas fix nitrogen into the soil. So if you've got nothing to plant for the moment, chuck some peas in, even if it's only a couple of weeks, because they'll take nitrogen out of the air and put it into the ground. And of course, nitrogen is one of the big things that your brassicas need. They're very heavy nitrogen feeders. Now that sandiness means that it's some pretty good drainage, and I've actually got extra coconut fibre through here which improves drainage. You don't want too much drainage because then your nutrients are going to wash through. So too much clay can become waterlogged but nutrients stick around. Too sandy, it's really good drainage but the nutrients wash away. So there's always a balance. And how you can improve both clay and loam is to add organic material. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a little bit of dynamic lifter or blood and bone. And this is a pelletized fertilizer, and I'm not going to put too much in, and I'm just going to mix it through the surface there. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my absolute compost choice. Now I make my own compost, and I do put a lot of that in my garden beds, but there's just nothing quite like cow manure. Now the thing about cow manure is that cows are ruminants, which means they've got multiple stomachs. In this case, they've got 4. And when they chew the grass, they chew it and they swallow it, and then they'll lie down and they'll chew their cud. So they regurgitate the grass and they chew it and they chew it, and it goes through all 4 stomachs, and it digests down to the point where what comes out of the cow looks nothing like grass. It's so well broken down. And what that means is the nutrients are bioavailable, much more so than something like horse manure, which pretty much comes out looking like grass. The other thing about it is lots of beneficial bacteria from the cow's stomach in the compost, and it's also got organics in here. So when they make this, they use cow manure, and they also use other organics, so broken down grasses, etc. So this is a really rich manure, and I like to use this in combination with my own compost. Now my own compost is made primarily from kitchen scraps, coconut, grass clippings, cardboard leaves, all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty good as a bulk material because I make a lot of it. But my go-to every single time is cow manure. It is just the bee's knees when it comes to adding compost in. And usually what I do is add a half to 1 bag to each garden bed at the start of each season. Now normally with brassicas, a bed this size, you probably only fit 3 or 4 brassicas, about 80 centimetres apart, 60 to 80 centimetres, because they get quite big. However, these little dwarves here are literally just dwarf broccoli. They're only going to put a small head on them, which suits me. And I'm going to put all of them in here, and I'm going to see how we go. There we go, we'll break them apart. I think this particular time I got 9 broccoli. And the thing about brassicas is you can bury them fairly deep. Unlike a lot of plants, you can even bury the first set of leaves on them. What brassicas don't like is they do not like to be flicking around in the wind, so they need a lot of support when they first start. And if you give them a lot of support by burying them deeply, they're going to thank you afterwards. The other thing they need is a fair amount of watering, and that watering is generally from underneath. They don't like their leaves being watered. Never assume you're going to get enough water from the rain, because I guarantee you, you won't. 1 or 2 deep waterings per week, and your brassicas will thank you. Putting these about 30 centimetres apart as per the packet, and I'm burying them to the point where there's actually quite a lot of support. And the last thing I'm going to do is give them a really good water in. Now they're getting a a fast release liquid fertilizer. I'm just getting from some power feed, and that has some fish emulsion in it, or some seaweed emulsion I should say. It also has some trace elements, which are all the little micronutrients that the main fertilizers don't have. And there you go, I'm just giving that a good water. That's all I need to do. Once or twice a week I'm going to come out here and give them a deep water. The other thing about brassicas is that they need 6 to 7 hours of sun in winter every day. So, sun's going to come up in the east, it's going to set in the west, and I'm going to get about 7 hours of sun in winter, which should be plenty. Where this bed sat previously, it was in shade in winter, so my brassicas didn't brassic. These should do just fine. A liquid fertilizer every 1 to 2 weeks, doesn't have to be strong. They are very, very heavy feeders, and if I do need to thin them out, I can, but I think at this space for dwarf, that'll be just fine. If these were full of cauliflowers or full broccoli, you'd probably only plant 3 to 4 in here because they're going to get to a fairly big size with all the leaves. So this weekend, get out there and put your brassicas in the ground. 1 or 2 bags of cow manure, get the good stuff in there, dig it around a little bit, put in some slow release fertilizer, and then once you put them in with a decent space in between, make sure you're watering them every couple of weeks with a fast-acting liquid fertilizer, and you're setting them up for success. All right, guys, as always, thanks for your time, and until next time, happy gardening. See ya.